The ice axe slipped. That's all it took. One moment of miscalculation, one patch of ice thinner than it should have been, and Gary's scream cut through the howling wind before disappearing into the white void below. I didn't see him hit bottom. The blizzard swallowed him whole. I'm Shane Mason, and 6 hours ago, we were 5. Now I was alone, hanging from a single ice screw on Mount Rainier's vertical face, my fingers so numb I couldn't tell if I was still gripping my axe. The wind screamed in frequencies that shouldn't exist. The snow attacked in horizontal razors. Eden went first, swept off the ridge by a gust from nowhere. One moment she was clipping in, the next she was airborne, her scream cut short as she vanished into the white. I tried to grab her pack, my fingers closing on empty air. Then Drea, who tried to clip into the same anchor as me and missed in the whiteout. Her carabiner dangled open, swinging in the wind. Christopher lasted longer, made it another 100 feet before the storm turned him around, sent him walking off the edge thinking he was heading to camp. I heard him calling for help, his voice growing fainter. And now Gary. Sweet Gary, who'd shown me his fiance's picture yesterday, a woman with kind eyes who'd never see him again. My left crampon skittered across ice. The wall was almost vertical, everything slick as glass. I could feel hypothermia setting in, that insidious cold that works inward until your thoughts slow and death whispers that maybe you should rest. That's how Celine died. Not on a mountain, but in a car wrapped around a pole on a rainy Tuesday in October. They said it was instantaneous. The other driver ran a red light doing 60, texting. They showed me the phone records at the trial. Running late, be there in 5. That's what cost me everything. They didn't tell me I'd spend the next 3 years trying to suffer enough for both of us. That I'd wake up every morning and have to remember all over again. The mountains were supposed to be my penance, my cathedral of pain. Turned out they were just my mausoleum. The ice screw groaned, that high-pitched protest every climber learns to fear. I had maybe 30 seconds. Below and left, I saw a dark slash in the rock. A crack. Maybe shelter. The angle was terrible. I didn't think. I yanked the axe free, felt the sudden weightlessness, and pushed off. White, gray, black, white again. The world spun. My shoulder slammed rock and I heard something crack. Couldn't tell if it was me or my equipment. The impact drove air from my lungs. My fingers found an edge, lost it, found it again. I was sliding, scraping down the face with nothing but friction slowing me. Ice bit through my gloves. Rock tore at my jacket. The wind tried to peel me off entirely. Then I stopped, wedged in darkness, legs dangling over nothing. The storm's fury suddenly muffled to a distant roar. I'd found the crack. I pulled myself forward, crawling into the mountain's mouth. The darkness swallowed me, and consciousness let go. I woke to the smell of stone and time. Not clean mountain rock. This was older, deeper. The scent of places sealed from the world so long they'd developed their own atmosphere. My first thought was that I was dead. But dead people don't ache, and every part of me screamed. My ribs burned where I'd hit the rock. My fingers throbbed as circulation returned, that special agony of frozen flesh remembering warmth. My head pounded with the rhythmic insistence of a brain rattled too hard against its skull. I tried to move and found I could. Nothing broken then. The space around me was too open, too deliberate. I fumbled for my emergency LED, a tiny thing supposed to last 12 hours. My hands shook as I found it. When it clicked on, the beam revealed something that made my breath stop. I was in a room, not a cave. A room carved from living rock by hands that understood geometry. The walls were too smooth, worked to a polish. The floor was deliberately level. The ceiling rose 8 feet above, and the space stretched back into shadows my light couldn't penetrate. But what stopped my breath were the symbols. They covered every surface, every inch of wall carved deep into the stone, filled with something dark that might have been soot or old blood. They weren't like anything I'd seen in museums or photographs. They weren't pictographs or letters. They were something else entirely. They moved in my peripheral vision, writhing and reforming when I wasn't looking directly. I'd swing my light left and catch them shifting on the right. Some geometric, Circles intersecting triangles in ways that shouldn't work in Euclidean space, spirals that hurt to follow. Others organic, like frozen screams given form, or shadows of things that should never cast shadows. My engineering background rebelled. These violated everything I knew about spatial relationships. But they were here. Real. My light found artifacts scattered around. A tarnished copper cup, its rim worn smooth by countless hands. Dried herbs bound with cord. Rusted iron pieces arranged in patterns I couldn't decode. Circles within circles, lines intersecting at angles that made my eyes ache. Someone lived here. Or had lived here. Or was living here still. Then I heard it. Metal scraping stone. Rhythmic, deliberate. The sound of someone who'd performed the same action so many times it had become meditation, became part of the rhythm of existence itself. I spun, and my light found him. He sat cross-legged in the far corner, entirely focused on a small structure of bent iron that held a dented pot over coals that glowed with unnatural steadiness. No flicker, no variation, just constant amber light that had probably been burning for longer than I could comprehend. He wore a heavy coat that might have been military surplus from some war I couldn't place, its original color lost to time and wear. Boots that were more patch than original leather, repaired so many times they were archaeology. A frayed scarf wrapped around his neck despite the temperate air. His hair was long, pulled back. His hands were scarred by work that leaves permanent records in skin. Tea? His voice was soft, cultured, touched with an accent I couldn't place. American, but from when? From where? It had the quality of someone who'd learned English long ago and kept it perfect through will alone. Perhaps the only thing still worth anything in this world. A warm cup of tea. I couldn't speak. This was hypothermia hallucination. I was dying in that crack. He looked up. His face was weathered, ancient and young simultaneously. Eyes that held weariness I recognized from my own mirror. The exhaustion of surviving when you shouldn't have. But there was something else. A depth suggesting those eyes had watched civilizations crumble. "You're wondering if I'm real," he said, pouring liquid into crude clay cups. "Or if you're dead. Or if those are the same thing." He held out one cup. "Drink. It'll help you decide." My body moved before my mind caught up. I crawled forward, took the cup. The heat felt real. The smell, chamomile and something sharper, felt real too. "How did you—" My voice was hoarse. "Are you part of another group? Trapped in the storm?" He smiled, the saddest expression I'd ever seen. "I've been here quite a while, long before your storm, long before most things." I looked around again. There were more symbols behind him, calendar markings, tally marks in columns suggesting impossible spans of time. "The others?" he asked. "Your climbing party?" "Gone. Eden, Drea, Christopher, Gary. The mountain took them one by one while I watched." He nodded slowly, as if he'd already known. "You carry grief, I can see it. Not just from today." I looked down at my tea. "My wife, Celine, 3 years ago. And you've been climbing ever since, seeking something, or seeking the end." I met his eyes. "Who are you?" "Someone who understands." He raised his cup. "To the weight of witness, to surviving when you'd rather not." We drank together. The tea was bitter and sweet, and it spread warmth through my chest that felt less like heat and more like forgetting. For a moment, the ache of 3 years dulled. I felt almost human again. Then I noticed his back. The shadows behind him shifted wrong. There were protrusions, massive forms folded beneath the coat. Wings, my brain supplied, even as I rejected it. I opened my mouth to ask, and his whole body went rigid. The cup shattered on stone. His eyes rolled back, showing whites that began glowing with golden light. His mouth opened, and sounds came out. Words in languages that predated language, syllables that made my teeth ache. He screamed, not in pain, in prophecy. His voice layered over itself, 100 tones at once. The symbols on the walls began to pulse in rhythm with his words. The temperature plummeted instantly. My breath froze and fell in crystalline chunks. This wasn't natural cold. This was the cold of the void between stars. I scrambled backward. This wasn't hypothermia. Something fundamental about reality was breaking. His hands clawed at things I couldn't see. Tears of light streamed down his face. His scream built to a crescendo that should have shattered stone. The last thing I saw was those wings unfurling. Massive, luminous, terrible in their beauty. They stretched wall to wall, too large for the space, existing in more dimensions than I could perceive. Feathers both solid and translucent. White containing every color and none. Then nothing. I woke in warmth. Something soft enveloped me, holding heat against my body with gentle pressure that felt protective rather than restraining. I could feel individual feathers, each one somehow aware of me, adjusting to maintain the perfect temperature. I could smell something clean and ancient at once, incense that had never been burned, wind from places that had no name, the scent of eternity distilled into something my human senses could almost comprehend. My cheek rested against a surface that rose and fell with steady breathing, a rhythm both foreign and deeply comforting. Wings. I was wrapped in wings. I knew you would come. The voice was above me, still sad but steadier now, as if the seizure had purged something that needed purging. I've been waiting for someone to listen, for someone who might understand what it means to carry impossible weight. I opened my eyes slowly, afraid of what I'd see, more afraid of what I wouldn't. The space was darker now, my LED dead. The only light came from those symbols on the walls, glowing with soft bioluminescence, pulsing gently like the breath of something vast and patient. And from him, from the being that held me like a father might hold a frightened child. His face was serene now, the seizure passed, but I could see the cost it had taken etched in the lines around his eyes. The wings cocooning me were both there and not there, existing in a space between physical and something else entirely. Feathers that looked solid but passed through each other when they moved, occupying the same space without conflict. White that contained all colors and none, that shifted based on the angle of observation, on my emotional state. "What are you?" I whispered, though some part of me already knew the answer. "I think you already know, Shane Mason." He said my name, though I'd never told him. Said it with a familiarity that suggested he'd known it long before I was born. "The question you should ask is not what I am, but why I'm here. Why I'm alone in this mountain cave. Why I stopped trying to change anything. I wanted to run, to laugh at the absurdity of it all. To curl into these impossible wings and never leave, never face the world outside, never climb another mountain or feel another loss." "You're an angel," I said. And the words felt absurd even as I knew they were true. Knew it in my bones the way you know the sun will rise or that water flows downhill. "I was," he answered, and there was a lifetime of grief in those two words. "Now I'm just tired. So very, very tired." His name was Gabriel. Not the Gabriel of stained glass windows and Renaissance paintings, all golden curls and beatific smiles. This was something older, something tired. The being that held me in impossible wings spoke the name with the weight of millennia, and I felt it resonate in my chest like a bell that had been rung once at the beginning of time and never stopped vibrating. "Gabriel," I repeated, and the name felt strange on my tongue. Too holy, too heavy. "The angel Gabriel?" "The angel Gabriel," he confirmed without pride. "Only exhaustion. Messenger of God. Herald of impossible births and apocalyptic ends. Soldier in a war lost before it began." His wings folded back into dimensions I couldn't perceive, leaving me sitting on the cave floor. Gabriel stood, and in the soft glow of the symbols, I could see him fully. Not glowing, not radiating glory, just a man who'd walked too far and seen too much. "You're wondering why I'm here," Gabriel said. It wasn't a question. Why an angel of the Lord is hiding in a mountain cave instead of standing at the right hand of God. Why I'm alone. Why I stopped. I nodded, still too overwhelmed to form coherent sentences. Gabriel walked to where the tea had been, stared at the cold coals for a long moment, then turned to face me. "Because I've seen too much, Shane Mason. Because I've tried too hard and failed too often. Because my father gave me a gift I never wanted. And now I'm condemned to watch the end of everything with perfect, terrible clarity. I don't understand, I managed. No, Gabriel said softly. You don't. Not yet. But I'm going to show you. I'm going to tell you why hope is a lie and faith is a mistake, and why the future belongs to darkness. Because you asked. Because in 3,000 years of wandering this earth, you're the first person to find me and ask why I stopped instead of demanding I fix things. He held out his hand. Are you ready to understand, Shane? Are you ready to carry the weight I carry? I should have said no. Should have run. Should have chosen ignorance. But I'd lost Celine, lost my team, lost my faith in anything mattering. What more could an angel's despair take from me? I took his hand. The cave dissolved, and I was standing in a garden. But this wasn't the Garden of Eden, wasn't the beginning. This was a garden outside Jerusalem, 2,000 years ago. I could smell olive trees and dust and the metallic tang of fear. And there, kneeling among the roots, was a man praying so hard he was sweating blood. I was here, Gabriel's voice came from beside me, and I turned to see him standing in his true form, wings spread, face luminous, a being of such beauty it hurt to look at directly. I watched him pray, watched him beg my father to take this cup from him, to spare him what was coming. The man in the garden, Jesus, I realized with a jolt, was weeping, praying with a desperation I'd never heard in any church sermon. This wasn't peaceful acceptance. This was terror. I wanted to answer him, Gabriel said, his voice breaking. Wanted to appear, to tell him that yes, the Father had heard, that yes, there was another way. But I'd been given my orders. Watch, bear witness, do not interfere. The scene shifted. A hill, 3 crosses. The man in the center dying slowly, gasping for air, crying out words that would echo through millennia. My God, why have you forsaken me? Gabriel stood at the foot of the cross, and tears of pure light streamed down his face. I could see his hands trembling, reaching up as if to pull out the nails himself, then falling back, constrained by commands that came from beyond comprehension. Do you understand what that did to me? Gabriel whispered. To hear God's own son ask the same question I'd been asking for centuries? To realize that even he, even the perfect one, the chosen one, even he couldn't escape abandonment. I watched as Jesus' head fell forward, watched as the sky darkened, watched as Gabriel's entire form shuddered with grief. I thought this would be the moment, Gabriel said. The moment my father would finally act, would finally show these humans what they'd done, would finally demonstrate that there are consequences for killing love itself. The sky remained dark, the earth remained silent, and Jesus remained dead. But nothing happened. Gabriel's voice was hollow. The world kept spinning. The soldiers went home to their families. The priests celebrated their victory. And 3 days later, when he rose and walked out of that tomb, I thought, this is it. This is when everything changes. The scene shifted again. I saw Jesus appearing to his followers, saw their joy, saw their certainty that now, everything would be different. But it wasn't, Gabriel said. He left, ascended, went back to heaven and has been silent ever since. And the world kept right on killing, kept right on suffering. And I realized, my father doesn't intervene because he's already made his intervention. He sent his son. And when that wasn't enough, and when humans executed divinity itself, he decided that was it. No more chances, no more miracles, just silence. The garden, the hill, the empty tomb, all of it faded, and we were back in the cave. But Gabriel wasn't done. I couldn't accept it, Gabriel said, pacing now, his wings leaving trails of light in the darkness. For centuries after, I couldn't accept that my father would just give up. So I took human form, again and again, walked among you, tried to nudge history toward mercy. He stopped, turned to face me. Do you want to know what I learned? That every time I tried to help, I made things worse. That every intervention had consequences I couldn't foresee. That free will the gift my father prizes above all else, makes it impossible to save anyone from themselves. The cave shimmered again, and I saw flashes of Gabriel in different times, different places. I was a soldier in your American Civil War, Gabriel said, and I saw him in a Union uniform, standing on a battlefield littered with bodies that stretched to the horizon. I thought, this war is about ending slavery, about choosing what's right over what's profitable, about humans finally choosing mercy. I can help with this. I can inspire the generals, guide the strategies, make this war shorter, make the victory decisive so that slavery dies quickly and stays dead. I watched as Gabriel moved through the camps, invisible to the soldiers around him. I saw him whisper in the ears of commanders, saw strategies bloom in their minds that they thought were their own ideas. Saw him standing beside generals as they made decisions, planting seeds of tactics that would save lives and end battles faster. I was so careful, Gabriel said, and there was agony in his voice. I'd learned from my mistakes. No grand interventions, just gentle nudges. Inspire a general to attack at dawn instead of noon. Plant the idea of a flanking maneuver that would avoid a deadly frontal assault. Make a commander hesitate before ordering a suicidal charge. But as I watched the timeline unfold, I saw the consequences Gabriel couldn't have foreseen. A battle won quickly here meant troops available for a bloodier engagement there. A regiment saved from one slaughter was marched straight into another. The war that might have ended in 2 years dragged on for 4 because the South, seeing smarter Union tactics, adapted, dug in deeper, fought more desperately. 600,000 dead, Gabriel said, his voice hollow. 600,000 instead of 300,000, because every time I shortened one battle, the strategic balance shifted in ways I couldn't predict. Every time I saved one regiment, the Confederate forces adjusted their strategy, and different regiments were sacrificed in different ways. The math of intervention never works out the way you think it will. I saw Gabriel on the battlefield at Gettysburg, saw him trying desperately to inspire Union commanders to see the weak points in Confederate lines, to press their advantages. And I saw how that 3-day battle became even bloodier because both sides fought with inspired ferocity. 51,000 casualties because an angel tried to help. And the worst part? Gabriel's voice cracked. The war ended. Slavery was abolished. I thought, finally something I did worked. Finally, I helped create lasting change. The scene shifted forward in time. I saw the Reconstruction era collapse. Saw Jim Crow laws rise from the ashes of slavery. Saw lynchings and segregation, and a different kind of bondage that would last another century. Free will, Gabriel spat the words. My father's sacred free will meant that even when I helped them win the war, even when slavery was abolished, humans were still free to choose cruelty. Free to invent new ways to oppress. Free to build systems of suffering that didn't need chains. He turned to me, and his eyes blazed. That's when I started to understand that salvation isn't about winning battles. It's about changing hearts. And hearts are the one thing I can't change. That's God's domain. And God had gone silent. The scene changed. World War I. Trenches filled with mud and blood and men who looked more like corpses than soldiers. The smell hit me first. Rot and gas and human waste and death. So much death the ground itself seemed poisoned by it. I tried again, Gabriel said, and I saw him in different uniforms, different trenches, moving through the nightmare of no man's land. Tried to inspire peace talks. Tried to make the generals see reason. That this war was pointless. That they were grinding an entire generation into the mud for nothing. Tried to plant the seeds of mutiny, of soldiers refusing to kill each other for old men's pride and territorial disputes that would be forgotten in 50 years. I watched as Gabriel moved through the trenches, touching men's shoulders, whispering in their ears. Some listened. I saw their eyes clear for a moment. Saw them question why they were here, why they were killing boys who spoke different languages but wanted the same things. To go home, to see their families, to live. And I saw what happened to those who listened. Saw them refuse to go over the top. Saw them executed by their own officers for cowardice. Saw them shot in the back for desertion when they tried to walk away from the madness. Every man I inspired to peace was killed by his own side, Gabriel said, and his voice was barely audible. Every general I nudged toward negotiation was replaced by one more eager for glory. Every attempt I made to shorten the war only changed which men died, not how many. The scene shifted to a Christmas in no man's land. I saw soldiers from both sides climbing out of their trenches, meeting in the middle, sharing cigarettes and photographs, singing songs. For one day, they remembered they were human. I wept when I saw that, Gabriel said. Wept because they'd done it themselves, without me, without divine intervention. They'd chosen humanity over orders, chosen peace over war. And I thought, maybe humans can save themselves. Maybe my father is right to let them choose. Then I saw what happened next. The officers on both sides were furious. The men who'd shared that Christmas were punished, transferred, separated, and the war ground on for 3 more years. 20 million dead, Gabriel said flatly. 20 million. And the peace I helped negotiate? The Treaty of Versailles? I whispered in the ears of diplomats. Tried to inspire mercy. Tried to make them see that punishing Germany too harshly would plant seeds for future war. I saw Gabriel in the halls of Versailles, desperately trying to soften the terms, to inspire forgiveness instead of vengeance. But the humans wanted blood, Gabriel said. Wanted Germany to suffer. Wanted revenge. And the treaty I helped create was just harsh enough to humiliate Germany, but not harsh enough to prevent them from rearming. So 20 years later, they'd have an even worse war. 50 million dead instead of 20. Because I tried to help. The trenches faded, replaced by jungles, placed by Vietnam. I thought maybe this time, Gabriel said, and I could hear the desperation in his voice. Maybe this time, I could learn from my mistakes. No grand interventions, just small things. Inspire a soldier to check his weapon and prevent a malfunction. Nudge a helicopter pilot to check his instruments and prevent a crash. Save individuals instead of trying to change outcomes. I saw Gabriel moving through the jungle, a presence none of the soldiers could see, touching them, trying to protect them. And I saw them die anyway. Saw them step on mines Gabriel hadn't noticed. Saw them shot by snipers Gabriel hadn't anticipated. Saw them break mentally from horrors Gabriel couldn't prevent because the horrors were everywhere, were everything. I saved hundreds, Gabriel said. Maybe thousands. And do you know what happened to most of them? They went home broken, addicted, suicidal, abandoned by their own country. I saved their bodies, but couldn't save them from what the war had done to their souls. He turned to me, and his eyes held such pain I had to look away. That's when I understood, Gabriel said quietly. That salvation isn't about surviving, it's about meaning. And I couldn't give them meaning. Only my father could do that. And he was silent. The scenes shifted faster now, showing me moments I recognized and moments I didn't. I was in Poland, Gabriel said, and suddenly we were standing in an office where men in uniforms were drawing up plans. Plans that would become policy. Policy that would become genocide. I tried everything. Gabriel's voice was breaking completely now. I appeared in their dreams, planted doubts, made them sick so they'd miss meetings, caused accidents that delayed trains. Everything I could do without directly violating free will. I watched as Gabriel worked invisibly, desperately, trying to sabotage the machinery of murder through 1,000 small interventions. And my father stopped me, Gabriel said, and now there was anger beneath the grief. Pulled me back, told me I was interfering too much, that humans had to choose, that even the systematic murder of 6 million souls, was a choice they had to be allowed to make. I screamed at him, Gabriel continued. For the first time in my existence, I screamed at my father. Asked him what the point was, what all of this suffering meant if even genocide wasn't enough to make him act. Asked him why he created beings capable of such love if he was going to let them destroy each other. Gabriel's hands clenched into fists. And do you know what he said? He said I didn't understand the full picture, that there were consequences to intervention I couldn't see, that free will was sacred and even he wouldn't violate it. So I watched, Gabriel whispered. I watched the trains, watched the camps, watched the smoke, heard every prayer, every plea for salvation that went unanswered. And I understood, finally truly understood, that my father had made his choice. He chose free will over mercy, chose human agency over divine intervention, chose to let them destroy each other rather than save them from themselves. The office faded, replaced by a different room. This one I recognized from history books, a war room during the Cuban Missile Crisis. "This was my last attempt," Gabriel said. 1962. The world balanced on the edge of nuclear holocaust. Men who'd never met each other deciding whether to end everything because of pride and fear and ideology. I watched as Gabriel moved through the room, invisible to the men making decisions. I saw him whisper in ears, plant ideas of caution, inspire thoughts of compromise. "And it worked," Gabriel said. "For once, it actually worked. The world didn't end. The missiles didn't fly. I thought, finally I'd done something right. Finally, I'd saved humanity from itself without making things worse." But his expression held no joy, only dread. "That's when he spoke to me," Gabriel said. "My father. For the first time in centuries, he spoke directly to me. And do you know what he said?" Gabriel's voice became multiple voices, layered with divine resonance. "You have interfered too much, my son. You have altered timelines, changed what was meant to be. There are consequences to your actions you cannot see." And then he gave me the gift, Gabriel said bitterly. "The curse. The ability to see forward, to see every possible future, to see exactly what my salvation had cost." The room dissolved and suddenly I was seeing everything. Timelines branching, splitting, multiplying, futures unfolding in infinite variation. And in every single one, I saw suffering, war, plague, death, darkness rising while heaven remained silent. "I saw it all," Gabriel said. "Every timeline, every possibility. Saw that by preventing nuclear war in 1962. I'd extended the timeline long enough for humans to develop even worse weapons. Saw that the people I'd saved in that room would go on to create policies that killed millions in other ways. Saw that my intervention had changed nothing fundamental, only delayed the inevitable." He grabbed my shoulders, and his hands burned with holy fire. And the worst part, the truly unforgivable part, was that in not one of those futures, not one single timeline, does my father return. Not once does the Messiah come back. Not once does heaven intervene to save what's left of his creation. Gabriel released me, and I stumbled back, my mind reeling from the weight of what he'd shown me. But he wasn't done. "Do you want to know why I'm here?" Gabriel asked. "Why I'm hiding in this cave instead of doing my duty?" I nodded, unable to speak. "Because I looked at all those futures," Gabriel said. "Looked at every possible timeline, and I saw one constant. One thing that never changes, no matter what choices humans make." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice held the weight of prophecy. "Him," Gabriel said. "Not my father. The other one. The one who fell. The one who's been waiting patiently in the dark places for my father to abandon his creation completely. In every future I can see, he rises. In every timeline, he wins. Because how do you fight something that grows stronger every time a prayer goes unanswered? How do you battle darkness when the light refuses to show up?" Gabriel walked back to the corner where he'd been making tea when I first found him, sat down heavily, as if the weight of millennia had finally become too much to bear standing. "I tried to warn my father," he said quietly. "Showed him what I'd seen. Begged him to reconsider his silence. To give humans some sign that he still cared, that they weren't alone, that their suffering mattered. And he said," Gabriel's voice broke completely, "he said that faith untested isn't faith at all. That humans needed to choose him without proof, without intervention, without any evidence he was listening. That their free will was more sacred than their survival." Gabriel looked up at me, and his eyes held an emptiness more terrifying than any darkness. "So I left," he said simply. "Came here, to this cave, to watch the end unfold with perfect clarity and know that I can do nothing to stop it, that I was never meant to stop it. that everything I tried to prevent was just delaying the inevitable while making the journey more painful. I sat there in silence, trying to process what Gabriel had shown me, trying to understand what it meant to be an angel who'd given up, a soldier who'd surrendered, a son who'd lost faith in his father. "Why did you tell me all this?" I finally asked. My voice sounded small, childlike. "Why share this burden?" Gabriel looked at me for a long moment. "Because you asked," he said simply. "Because in 3,000 years of walking the earth, you're the first person to find me and ask why I stopped instead of what I could do for them. Because maybe, just maybe, sharing this weight makes it slightly less unbearable." He stood up, walked to me, placed one hand on my forehead, and suddenly I saw, not the past, but fragments of the future, glimpses of what was coming. Wars that would make World War II look small, plagues that would make the Black Death look merciful, children forced to become soldiers, cities emptied, oceans dead, and through it all a presence growing stronger. Him, the one who shows up when God doesn't. "I can see it all," Gabriel whispered. "Every horror that's coming, every tragedy waiting to unfold, and I can't stop any of it. Can only watch, can only witness, can only carry the terrible knowledge that we're living in the last age before everything falls apart." He removed his hand, and I gasped, released from the vision. "You can tell them," Gabriel said. "You can go back to your world and tell them everything I've shown you. Warn them. Try to prepare them. But they won't believe you. They won't understand. Or worse, they'll understand and simply not care because caring hurts too much and they're already drowning in their own pain." "And what about you?" I asked. "You're just going to stay here? Watch it all happen?" Gabriel's smile was the saddest thing I'd ever seen. "What else is there? I've tried fighting, tried helping, tried intervening. Every time I make things worse. Every time I learn that salvation can't come from angels. It has to come from God. And God has made his choice. He's chosen silence." He walked to the wall, touched one of the tally marks with reverence. "So I count, I mark the days, I watch the futures unfold, and I wait for the end with perfect, terrible clarity. Because that's all I have left. That's all any of us have left. The knowledge that we're passengers on a vehicle heading off a cliff, and the driver abandoned the wheel centuries ago." Gabriel turned back to me, and his wings manifested briefly, not in glory, but in grief. A reminder of what he'd been before he'd seen too much, known too much, failed too often, too. "Go to sleep now, Shane Mason," he said softly. "When you wake, you'll be found. You'll go home. You'll wonder if any of this was real. But you'll remember. You'll carry what I've shown you. And maybe, just maybe, you'll understand why hope is the cruelest lie ever told to beings who don't live long enough to see how the story ends." I felt that irresistible drowsiness overtaking me, but I fought it for one more moment. "Gabriel," I said, "what about Celine? My wife. You said you were there. You said you could have saved her." Gabriel's face twisted with pain. And suddenly I saw it. Saw him standing in the rain beside a crumpled car. Saw him looking at my wife's body. Saw him reaching out, as if to touch her, to bring her back, to undo what physics and momentum and human carelessness had done. And I saw him stop. Saw his hand fall. Saw the tears streaming down his face. "I could have saved her," Gabriel said, and the words were razors. "I could have inspired the other driver to look up 1 second earlier. Could have made Celine check her phone, delay her departure by 30 seconds. Could have caused a flat tire, anything." He looked at me with eyes that held guilt. But I'd been punished for interfering before. Been reminded that every intervention has consequences. That saving one life might doom another. That I was not to play God because I was not God. "So you let her die," I said. It wasn't an accusation, just a statement of fact. "I let her die," Gabriel confirmed, "along with millions of others I could have saved but didn't. Because I'd learned my lesson. Because intervention only delays suffering, doesn't prevent it. Because free will is sacred, even when it kills everything beautiful." He touched my forehead again. And this time I felt only warmth. Only the residual love of a being who still cared even though caring had destroyed him. "Sleep," Gabriel whispered. "And when you wake, try to find something worth fighting for, even if the fight is hopeless. Try to find someone worth loving, even though love always ends in grief. Try to find meaning in a universe being abandoned by its creator. Because that's all we have left. That's all that separates us from him. We choose to care, even though caring is irrational. We choose to hope even though hope is impossible." His voice faded, and I fell into darkness deeper than any cave, warmer than any wings. The last thing I heard was Gabriel's whisper, "And I will remain here, watching, until even the stones forget my name." I woke to silence. Not the silence of the cave with its breathing walls and pulsing cymbals. Not the silence of the storm, which was really just wind screaming too loud to process. This was the silence of absence. The silence of something that had been there and was now gone. The silence that comes when you wake from a dream so vivid it takes minutes to remember which reality is real. I opened my eyes slowly, afraid of what I'd see, or wouldn't see. I was wedged in a crack in the rock face. A narrow fissure, barely wide enough for my body, nothing like the vast carved chamber I remembered. No symbols on the walls, no artifacts scattered in careful arrangement, no glowing coals, just raw stone and the gray light of dawn filtering through the opening. My body ached. My shoulder throbbed where I'd hit rock during my fall. My hands were torn from gripping ice and stone. But I was warm. Impossibly warm for someone who'd spent the night in a mountain crevice during a blizzard. I pulled myself forward and emerged into morning light. The storm had passed. The sky was that brutal, crystalline blue that only comes after a cleansing. The kind of blue that makes you believe the world could be beautiful if you didn't know better. Below me, maybe a quarter-mile down, I could see lights, headlamps, a search and rescue team. Looking for me. My hand went to my pocket. My fingers found something that shouldn't be there. A stone, smooth, warm despite the mountain cold, and carved into its surface, still glowing faintly, was a symbol. One of the symbols from the cave walls. A circle intersecting a triangle in a way that hurt to look at directly. Evidence. Proof. Or the last hallucination of a broken mind. I closed my fist around it and felt its warmth spread through my palm. Felt it pulse in rhythm with my heartbeat. "Hey! Hey!" A voice from below. One of the rescue team had spotted me. I had maybe 10 minutes before they reached me. 10 minutes to decide what I was going to tell them. The stone pulsed in my hand like a second heart. They reached me in 8 minutes. 3 rescuers in orange jackets. Shane Mason? The lead rescuer, Karen, was weathered by mountain work. "Can you hear me?" "Mount Rainier," I said. My voice was hoarse. "I'm Shane Mason. The storm?" "The others?" she asked. I shook my head. "Okay, we're getting you down. Can you walk?" I tested my legs. They worked. "I think so." They gave me water, checked my vitals, asked questions. I answered correctly because Gabriel's visions hadn't broken my mind. They'd just shown me my mind was too small to hold what was true. The descent took 4 hours. Karen talked to keep me present. I answered on autopilot. "You'll need to talk to someone," she said. "That's serious trauma." "I'll talk to someone," I said. At base camp, emergency services, a confused doctor, park rangers, media, and Gary's fiancée with desperate hope in her eyes. I couldn't look at her. The hospital kept me 3 days. I played the traumatized survivor. Left out the angel. Left out everything. At night, I'd hold the stone and feel its warmth. They let me go. Physically healthy, mild PTSD. I walked out into Seattle sunshine. Home felt wrong. Too small. Celine's picture's still on the walls. I sat and pulled out the stone. Pulled out. The symbol seemed to shift. The stone pulsed. Once, twice, 3 times. I walked to my laptop, but before I could type, I felt it. A pull. The stone burned hot. I needed to see the last vision. I closed my eyes, and then I saw it. The last vision. I was standing on a hill overlooking a city. any city. All cities. The sky was red, not sunset red, blood red, permanent red. The sun was a dim circle behind eternal haze, smoke and ash and chemicals suspended forever. The air tasted of metal and rot and something else, something that had no name in any human language. The city below was burning with fires that didn't consume. They burned cold, burned wrong, fed by something that wasn't fuel. And the smoke moved against the wind, moved with purpose, moved like it was alive and hunting. I saw people in the streets, but calling them people felt wrong. They moved like people, but their eyes were empty, hollow, as if something had eaten everything inside them and left only the shell walking. Children walked among them, children carrying weapons too large for their small frames. 8-year-olds with rifles, 10-year-olds with machetes, 12-year-olds with bombs strapped to their chests. Their faces held no innocence, no fear, no joy, no anything. Just the same hollow emptiness. "This is 30 years from now," Gabriel's voice came from beside me. "Maybe 40. Time becomes fluid near the end. But this is coming. As certain as mathematics. As inevitable as gravity." The scene shifted. Hospitals overflowing. Not with the sick, but with the dying. Plagues that weren't natural. Diseases engineered in laboratories by scientists who'd thought they were creating cures, but had instead created weapons. Biological warfare that had escaped containment, or maybe had never been contained at all. Maybe they'd released it on purpose. Maybe by then, humans had stopped caring about the difference. I saw bodies stacked in the streets because there was nowhere else to put them. Saw mass graves dug by machines because there weren't enough living to bury the dead. Saw children stepping over corpses on their way to school, if school even still existed. Saw them not crying, not reacting, because death had become so common it was just part of the landscape. "Pestilence," Gabriel whispered. "The third horseman. But not disease as punishment. Disease as choice. Humans weaponizing biology the way they weaponized everything else. And when it escaped, or when they released it, they blamed each other. Used it as justification for more war, more killing, more choosing darkness over light. The scene changed. Famine. Continents turning to dust. Not from drought alone, but from what humans had done to the earth. The aquifers drained and poisoned. The topsoil blown away or contaminated. The oceans dead. Truly dead. Massive zones where nothing lived, where the water itself had become toxic. I saw people eating things that should never be eaten. Synthetic proteins that barely sustained life, but slowly poisoned the body. Processed materials that looked like food but had no nutrition. And the desperate, the truly desperate, eating things I won't describe because some horrors should never be given words. Mothers making impossible choices, Gabriel said, and his voice was breaking. Which child gets the last ration? Which child lives one more day? Which child they let die so the others can survive? And the worst part? They stop feeling guilty about it. Stop feeling anything. Because feeling means suffering, and they've suffered so much they've burned out the capacity for it. The scene shifted again, and I saw him. Not with horns and hooves. Not the devil from medieval paintings. He looked almost holy, almost divine. Beautiful in a way that made you want to worship, want to kneel, want to give him everything you had. But his eyes held nothing but hunger. The hunger of something that had waited in darkness for millennia and was finally being fed. War, Gabriel whispered. The first horseman, but not war as we knew it. War as religion, war as identity, war as the only thing left that gives meaning to meaningless lives. I watched as armies marched under his banner, but they didn't see him. They saw their own flags, their own symbols, their own righteous causes. They thought they were fighting for God, for country, for family, for survival. They didn't realize they were all fighting for him, that every drop of blood spilled in the name of righteousness was a prayer offered to darkness. And the children were everywhere in these armies. Not forced. No. By then they volunteered. By then, being a soldier was the only path to meaning in a world that had lost all meaning. The only way to feel anything in a world that had grown numb. He doesn't need to invade, Gabriel's voice was hollow. He's already here. Has always been here, waiting in the spaces between faith and despair. Growing stronger every time a prayer goes unanswered. Every time an atrocity goes unpunished. Every time a child asks, "Why did God let this happen?" and gets silence for an answer. I saw people worshiping him, willingly, eagerly, because he offered what God wouldn't. Answers, justice, vengeance, power. The certainty that their suffering meant something, that their enemies would be punished, that they were chosen and righteous and deserved to win. They'll kill in his name thinking they're serving the light, Gabriel said. They'll commit atrocities believing they're doing God's work. They'll destroy everything beautiful and call it holy. And he'll grow stronger with every act of violence committed in false righteousness. The scene shifted one final time, and I saw what Gabriel had promised. The sky burning. Not metaphorically. The atmosphere itself was on fire. Chemical reactions triggered by endless wars and released toxins creating flames that existed in the upper atmosphere. Permanent. Unquenchable. A ceiling of fire that would burn for generations. And the earth below, a perfect mirror of hell. Not because demons had dragged it down, but because humans had built it themselves. Brick by brick. Choice by choice. In the absence of divine intervention. Even heaven suffers, Gabriel's voice cracked completely. My father's silence isn't peace, it's absence. He's retreating, pulling back, letting go. And when God abandons creation, creation doesn't just end, it inverts. Paradise burns. The halls where I once sang echo with screams. Angels falling not from rebellion, but from despair. I saw it then. Saw the celestial realm, not as glorious architecture, but as something dying. Angels falling like rain, their light dimming, their wings charring. The divine light going out because the source had turned away. Heaven becoming its own kind of hell because a father had stopped caring for his children. We burn too, Gabriel whispered. Not because we're punished, but because we're tied to a father who's giving up. And in every future I can see, every timeline, every possibility, this is how it ends. The sky red, the earth dead, heaven fallen. Humanity destroying itself while God watches from a distance that grows greater every day. Or maybe he's not watching anymore. Maybe he's already gone. And the children, Gabriel's voice broke completely. Shane, the children. Every child born into this future will know only war. Will grow up with weapons in their hands and emptiness in their hearts. Will fight battles they don't understand for a God they've never known against an enemy that was never really the enemy. The vision intensified. I saw a specific child, maybe 7, maybe 8. A little girl standing on a battlefield holding a rifle almost as tall as she was. Her eyes were dead, completely dead. And as I watched, she pulled the trigger and killed another child on the opposite side. Then she reloaded. Then she killed again. Mechanical. Emotionless. A machine made of flesh that had once been capable of love. This is what hurts most, Gabriel whispered. Not the grand destruction. Not the apocalyptic battles or the burning sky or even the death of heaven itself. It's this. Children who never got to be children. Innocence murdered before it could bloom. Love killed before it learned to speak. Hope extinguished before it understood what hope meant. And there's no salvation coming, Gabriel said. No Messiah returning on clouds. No angels descending to save the day. No father reaching down to say enough. Just the slow, grinding transformation of everything beautiful into everything broken. Until there's nothing left but him. The God who showed up when God didn't. The vision released me. I don't know how long I knelt there. Time had stopped meaning anything. Eventually, I stood, walked to my laptop, started typing. Not because it would change anything, but because not trying felt like surrender. I wrote for 3 days. The words poured out like a wound bleeding. When I finished, I realized how insane it sounded. A traumatized climber claiming he'd met an angel who showed him the apocalypse. They'd call it grief, PTSD, breakdown, anything but true. Maybe they'd be right. Maybe the stone is just a rock I assigned meaning to, but I don't think so. I think Gabriel was real. I think the future he showed me is real. I think the red sky is coming. And I think we have to fight anyway. Not because fighting will change the outcome, but because not trying means we've already lost. So I'm publishing this. Most won't believe it. Most won't care. But somewhere, maybe, someone will hear it and choose differently. Did I meet an angel? Or just my own dying faith dressed in wings? Either way, I carry the same burden Gabriel carries. I've seen what's coming, but here's what they don't tell you about hopelessness. Sometimes you keep walking anyway, not because you believe in tomorrow, but because the alternative is lying down in the snow. Maybe that's all faith ever was, just choosing to walk forward when everything screams at you to stop. So I'll tell this story. Most won't believe it, but maybe someone will choose better. Because if an angel has given up and God is silent, then it falls to us. And I don't know if that's terrifying or beautiful. Maybe both. The stone sits on my desk now. Cold. Dark. A reminder. And sometimes late at night it pulses. Just once. Like a heartbeat from far away. Like Gabriel, still counting days. Still watching. Still choosing to witness. And I understand now why he stayed. Why he stopped fighting. Because sometimes the bravest thing is acknowledging you can't save everyone. But you can choose to care anyway. You can choose to try anyway. Even when hope is a lie. Especially when hope is a lie. Because that's what makes us human. Not winning. Just trying. Not succeeding. Just caring. The stone pulses one more time. And I go back to living. Trying to find meaning in a universe being abandoned by its creator. Trying to find hope in a future that belongs to demons.